Afternoon, everyone. My name's Jim. I'm an addict. Thank you, the committee, from my heart for asking me to come and share. I feel really overwhelmed by the whole occasion, and I come in here from a place of less than. The minute that I walk in here, I've just got a mind and a disease that's geared up to not tell me that, I have a message to share. It tells me that there's other people in here that can do this job much better than me, and I've heard them over and over. But, thankfully, I've got a good God, I've got good sponsorship, and I've got good friends that right-size me and centre me. So I have to share that, to be honest, about, I'm here. Luke reckons he was more nervous than me. That's a lie. It's a definite lie. So look, I get asked to share what it was like, what I've done, and what it's like now. And this is my story. There might be elements of it that you don't identify with. I was told, look for the similarities, not the differences. There's loads of my stuff that will be different to yours. I have a disease that centers on difference anyway. It wants to find why I shouldn't be here. I don't talk like you, look like you, come from the same place as you, have the same, upbringing, class, whatever it may be. And don't judge the fellowship by what I share. What I share is my experience. It's my experience out there. It's my experience of what I've done and what I haven't done, and what's led me to where I am today. So I grew up, I talk about what it was like, not because the stuff that happened in my life made me an alcoholic or an addict. It's because that it does define my spiritual well-being, my emotional well-being, and my psychological well-being. It's not what defines me as a drug addict, though. And I grew up in like this real juxtaposition environment of like, my dad was an alcoholic, so booze was okay. All my family were Irish, so drinking was okay. It was part of the culture. And my mum was this like liberal, easygoing, like love life hippie that just took acid and smoked marijuana, and everything was great. And like the drinking side of my dad was like this heavy criminality and violence. Just this real juxtaposition. And I grew up in that environment with that stuff being normal, like it was okay. I didn't know any difference to that. I didn't know what you was like or what your upbringing was like. I just knew that that's what I had. I was given some real firm stuff from the beginning, and that was that you kept your mouth shut about what happened in the house. So the yellow card, when I read it in the meetings, it was like home from home. I get that. Keep your mouth shut. Don't go around gossiping about other people. But that wasn't a good thing for a young kid to grow up with. Keep your secrets. Don't tell no one. Don't expose what your feelings are like. Grow up. Be a man. I grew up in this weirdness in a council estate in West London, and if today, I think I probably would have been diagnosed with something. Like everyone seems to have a diagnosis today. I'm not knocking if you have, by the way. But like, I probably would have been diagnosed with something because left unchecked, you'd walk out the kitchen, you'd just leave from the front room to the kitchen and your keys would go in the tea. I'd be trying to set fire to the net curtains. And you'd be like, why? And I would just be like, I don't know. As a kid, so I just had this disposition that I didn't really understand. I always knew that I was doing something wrong. I always knew that there was something wrong with me because I was constantly being told that. But I didn't understand why that was. And my mum used to, like this liberal, happy, chilled out, like smoke weed woman that I used to come home from school with, and they'd be playing bongos and guitars in my front room, passing around a chillum. And there was always good cakes in my house. My mum was a caterer as well. There was always these beautiful cream cakes in the fridge because she was stoned, and had the munchies. I kind of get that now, I didn't then. But what she used to do is put cannabis in my food. Because the desired effect was that by doing that, this kid that was bouncing off the walls and left unchecked would be setting fire to your curtains and putting keys in the tea, was chilled. I was just all right. We used to have wine at the dinner table. I'm in a council flat in West London, and we're having diluted wine because it was normal. It's what people in the continent did. The French did it, and the French were civilized with drinking, apparently. That's just kind of how I grew up. And it was the reality of it is I can paint it as like rose tinted goggles. I've got kids today, and I don't want that for my kids, let me tell you. And it isn't what they got. And I'm not knocking my mum for that stuff, and I'm not knocking my dad for that stuff. I did. I don't today. I'm at peace with it. They did the best that they could. And And inevitably what happened is I ended up going into care. I got taken out of that environment and I got put into care. But it wasn't like I went into care voluntarily. It wasn't like I was snatched out of care. That's what I used to portray, you know. But my mum gave me up. That's the reality of it. I was 9 and my mum put me in the care society because I was unmanageable. You know, I was seeing child psychologists and psychiatrists, and like my behaviour was unmanageable. And I just remember it's a really defining point of me being in this house of these people that I didn't know, and my stuff being delivered on the front door of the porch by my mum, and I just really didn't understand what had happened. But what happened within me was this real firm, resolute decision that no one was ever getting close to me again and ever hurting me and dismissing me like that, ever. And these boundaries and these walls and these stuff just gets built up around me. I'm a kid. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't allow anyone. I started using of my own around exactly the same time. You know, not out of choice. It was like the kids, the cool kids, what I thought were doing glue and Tipex thinners and, you know, cider. And I hadn't seen glue and Tipex thinners before. That stuff scared me. Cannabis and drink was like comfortable. So when it come round the circle, you know, when they're passing things around and I'm watching what they're doing and my mind's going, when that comes to you, say no, maybe have a toke on the joint, you know, even though I don't smoke. But don't do that stuff with a bag and on your sleeve. And as it come to me, I copied what they do and I get the effects produced from it. And what he talks about is that I get ease and comfort. That's what he talks about in the book. That when I place something inside me, I get ease and comfort. So before that moment, before I put anything inside me, I was uncomfortable with me. I hated who I was. I knew there was stuff wrong with me and I didn't know why. I was overweight, I was uncomfortable, I was awkward, and I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I was bullied consistently at school. Like I'm 9 years old and I hated my life. And then I put these substances in my body and guess what happened? Nothing changed, but everything changed. So what I mean by that is the external stayed exactly the same, but my internal completely changed. My perception of it was different. I was all right all of a sudden. I didn't really care about what you thought of me. I was never bullied from that day. The drugs did for me what I couldn't do for myself. You know, my life just changed and I made a firm decision. Whether I was geared up with the allergy from that point, I don't know. But I know that what I did was consistently pursued drinking and drugging. Like I haven't got a story that I came in here for sporadic, like I had a little drink and a little drug. I used when I was 9. I stopped using when I come into the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous at the age of 32. There was no break because I can't be with myself without a substance in me. The ease and comfort that I'm given from the substance is removed. If you take that away from me and leave me with the uncomfortability of myself, I'm in trouble. So my story kind of then goes onto this path of cliched of like criminality, violence, drugs, drinking, and it being all right as well, by the way. Nothing was wrong with all that until it stopped being all right. Like, and it stopped being all right when I was about 15 or 16. You know, it just stopped being okay. I'm all of a sudden I'm faced with like cocaine-induced psychosis, not paranoia, you might be talking about me, but like convinced that they're coming, sitting in mute silence, not being able to move. And if I did leave my house, I used to have to hide behind people's cars and bushes just to go to the newsagents in case you were coming for me. What that looked like in the end is I come out of care. I want to live with my mum. My mum put me in a boarding school, a private boarding school. And my mum wasn't very good at being a mum, bless her, you know. So I was put into a boarding school. I got kicked out of there. There was very posh kids that were very wealthy from old school money, and I didn't fit in. I went and lived with my dad. I got moved. What happened was the people around me got to see that my life wasn't very good, so they moved me out of the country to go and, you know, be okay. It was always you. It was them. It was the bad crowd. It was never me. And inevitably, the consequences got worse. The problem got worse. So in the end, like, there's a bit in the book that talks about incomprehensible demoralization. And I've looked up loads of the words in the big book because I was encouraged to do that. I've never looked up those 2 words. And the reason that I didn't have to is I knew what they meant. I knew what they meant. And what that accumulated to for me was at the age of 18, I was going out of my house and I was going out to have a couple. I never went out to have one because I knew that was a lie. Having a couple wasn't a lie, obviously, you know. So I went out to have a couple and that night ended up with me being arrested, which was a regular thing, you know, in a police station. But this time I'm being arrested for murder. as a result of a fight that I've been involved with outside a pub with someone. The guy had died. I'm a blackout drinker. Stuff happens to me and I have no awareness of it going on. And I didn't believe that what they was telling me was true until I watched, images on CCTV cameras. And so I was, put into prison, taken to court, and I got given custody for life at the age of 18, with a minimum recommendation to serve no less than 18 years for rehabilitation. And incomprehensible demoralisation was at that point coming out of this courthouse in London, looking out of a bus that transports prisoners through this little box, looking over London in summer and just thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, how did that happen? How did it go from getting ease and comfort? How did it go from me having parties? How did it go from it being okay? How did it go from the consequences not being too severe to this? Like, how did that happen? Because I'm not the guy that, given sufficient reason, can stop or moderate. I'm not the guy that when you present things to me and tell me, Jim, A, B, and C will happen unless you stop or moderate. I don't know how to do that. Stop or moderate is just alien language to me. I wish I could stop or moderate, but I didn't know how to. So I went into this institution out of my depth. But I'm what that talks about in the chameleon, in the book, it talks about being a chameleon, innit? We adapt and we adjust to the maddest of environments. And I adapted and I adjusted to this place, and it become comfortable. I become comfortable in institutions. I grew up in institutions. From the age of 9 being in children's homes up until the age of like 30 when I was released. Like, I've just been constantly in institutions. And when I was in these places, like, you would think that the concept that it's got to be different, Jim, you can't keep doing what you're doing, it has to change, would be enforced, but I don't know how to do that. So I just switch goalposts, I changed the format. I went into prison convinced that there were certain drugs I was never going to take because they were beneath me. I'm just a cocaine user, thank you very much, looking down my nose at anyone else that wasn't that, dirty smackheads. And yet in prison, what I found out, because I kept getting, you had to give piss tests, I had to keep giving urine samples to prove that I was not presenting a risk to anyone. It was part of the process. And you'd think, because it's a 99-year sentence that I'm given, so it means I don't have to be released. So it means if I keep playing the system and if I keep throwing dice against my liberty, I'm never getting out. So what I used to do was walk around. So I stopped smoking cannabis because I found out that stays in your system for 28 days. That was a no-go. But heroin was done within 3 days. Why not use heroin? The man that gave me my first bit of heroin told me it was a time killer. I had a lot of time to kill. It just made sense. So I had the heroin. It made me really sick. I cursed the guy that gave it to me. And I continued to use heroin every day onwards. But I wasn't a heroin addict, thank you. Wasn't one of those guys. I had this in check. So what happened is, we've become the chameleon. Some got the art of chatting bullshit really quickly. I can adapt and adjust. We can apply ourselves to other things. So I'd sit in these battery of psychological and psychiatry tests throughout my whole sentence, attending courses, ticking boxes and saying the right thing. Until in the end, we reached a point where my recommendation was firstly reduced, and then they deemed that I no longer presented a risk to society. I was walking around with someone else's urine and a bottle in between the cheeks of my arse for over 10 years. Not the same piss, it was changed. So, like, that's mad, isn't it? Like, that, when I look back, that was just so normal. To find someone in the prison that didn't take drink or drugs or didn't take any pharmaceuticals, so that I could ask them, like, as a stranger, excuse me, is it possible that you can just piss in that for me every morning? So that's what I did. And I played the game and I ticked the boxes and they decided that it was okay to release me. And that's what they did. Now, every minute of every hour of every week of every month of every year for over a decade, I stood looking outside this tiny little window, praying to the God that I didn't understand, that please just give me the opportunity to get back out there. Please allow me to be different. Please, I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't mean to do anything. Please give me another chance. And then I got given the opportunity. And they took me to a place where I knew they were going to drug test me, and I carried on using drugs. So within 24 hours of being released from this sentence, I'm sitting in front of people again where they're talking about recalling me back into the prison because I've shown positive for drugs when they've tested me. And obviously I lie, and I was offended when it showed up positive. And I'd read some books in prison because there was some time. And I I probably got a PhD at the time in like medicines and stuff. Like I knew how long things stayed in the system for, and I studied drugs. And I hoodwinked this woman. I was like, listen, I smoked a cigarette outside the prison gates that was on the floor. That must have had the cannabis and other stuff in it. And my missus, she gave me some tablets to have on the way here because I had a headache, and maybe that's what had the heroin in it. And, you know, and she was like, cool, like you've got an opportunity to continue to be clean and sober. And what I had was this 2 years of probably the worst of my life in society. The goalposts had changed. And what it looked like before I come in here was this. I'd burnt every bridge. This time it was going to be different was done. The double life and deceit that I'd lived for so long and been really successful about was exposed for exactly what it was. I was 11 and a half stone, injecting heroin and crack cocaine in my body continually throughout the days, doing disgusting stuff to get drugs that didn't fucking work for me anymore, to give to dealers that I couldn't stand, to repeat the cycle over and over and over and over until in the end I'd black out somewhere, normally in a stairwell or a car park or wherever. And I repeated that cycle so that when I would come to in the morning, it wasn't this time it will be different. It was, I know exactly what's on the menu today. What's on the menu today is what was on the menu last week, last month, and last year. It ain't going to get any different. And now everyone knows about it. They're starting to talk about, you might need a bit of help. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I do. But what help do you give me? So I go to see psychologists and psychiatrists again, and counsellors and doctors and physicians and imams and churches and to go and get advice and help. And I just continue to keep using drink and drugs. And I don't want to use them now. It's done. I don't want to put the stuff in my body anymore. So the best that I've got is that I'm not suicidal, is that I just want to check out. I don't want to live, but I certainly do not want to carry on living the way that I am. And I used to go to a train station so often that the guy didn't ask me for a ticket. And I would sit on the platform where the express train come past, and I would pray that I would have the courage to step in front of the express train to put an end to what I was existing in. So that's what it was like. And I have to remember that because I have a mind that tells me it weren't that bad. That's what I have. My mind says maybe you just, blow things out of proportion sometimes. You might not even need a beer anymore. Just don't take heroin anymore. Stop smoking crack cocaine and just have a puff. A little bit of cannabis never hurt anyone, It's a weed, it's legal. That's what I have ahead. It tells me that it was glamorous and it wasn't that bad. I sat in the back of limousines with models having that Parmesan flaky cocaine that people talk about. I've never seen fucking Parmesan flaky cocaine. But I have a mind that tells me that is my experience. So then what happens is this. I have an opportunity. There's this little guy, a little Glaswegian guy in Brighton, and this woman that I was living, she was a governor of a prison. Like, it's a whole other story. But she had become hostage. And she reached out to this guy through another fellowship, and this guy came to come and 12-step me. And he turned up, and he looked like, the Mario brothers, on the thing. He looked like a Mario brother. He's a painter and decorator, and he had his bib and braces on, and his deep Glaswegian accent. And he took me into a coffee shop, and he said, I know where you're at. I know what's going on for you. I've been where you are. It's okay. There's a way out. I told him to fuck off. And I walked out. I told him he didn't know nothing about where I was. He didn't understand anything about me. And I left. But what he did was he disturbed me. He planted the seed, and I didn't even know it. I walked away from there with tears in my eyes that I was trying to bat away because emotion was done and dead, yeah? That stuff got to go down. And I went back to this stairwell that I used to use and I was using. And inevitably, because of this chaotic life that I was living, I got recalled back to prison. My biggest fear became my reality. And I got put back in prison for stuff that I didn't do. You know, like everyone didn't do it. No one did it, did they? But like I genuinely didn't do it. So God moved for me in a way that I just didn't understand at the time. That's what happened. I believe if I hadn't gone back into prison, I wouldn't be here today. I wholeheartedly believe that. I got put away. I did a detox when I was away. And they asked me a question. I had to sit on a board, a panel of people that make a decision about whether I should be released. So the charges that I was arrested for originally were dropped. So now they're looking at, okay, let's look at about getting you back in society again. And after all these questions of hours of like me kind of sitting there fighting for my life, there was this one guy that said nothing, that looked up from his clipboard and just said, if we release you, will you use drink and drugs again? Now I lie for a living, you know, just bullshit comes out of my mouth even when I don't want to say it. And what come out of my mouth, even though my mind said no, was, yeah, I definitely will. And I knew the minute that them words come out of my mouth, it's finished. If I present a risk to the public, I'm not allowed to be with the public. It's game over. And I left the room and I was kind of resigned to the fact that this was it. Anyway, they come back to me and they asked me if I wanted to go to a 12-step treatment centre. All of those words were foreign, by the way. 12-step treatment centre. I was just like, yeah? Because what I hear is, do you want to get out of prison? I'm like, yeah. They said, you know, it's abstinent based. I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, okay. So I'd been on a drug-free wing for 6 months, not taking heroin and crack. I thought I was drug-free. I genuinely, on my hand on my heart, thought I was drug-free. Anyway, they released me. They put me in a treatment centre, which was basically a mental institution in Brighton, in Sussex. They put me in a mental institution and dressed it up as a treatment centre. And there were 37 people in these houses. And when I got in, it was like new people, you know, like I've walked in the door and they're like, hello, and everyone's saying hello, and it's all very nice. And then they start asking me questions. And one of the questions was, what's your clean time? And I didn't know what they were talking about. So someone else said it. What's your clean time? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was like, when did you last stop taking drugs? I'd been using about 2 hours before I walked into the treatment centre. So I was like, 6 months ago, because that's when I was on the drug-free wing. And I was like, hell, man, you're the cleanest guy in the treatment centre. You've got to come to a meeting tonight and pick up a key ring. And I was like, meeting? Like, what are you talking about? So 2 guys took me to a meeting. I went to my first Cocaine Anonymous meeting. And I walked into the room and I was terrified. I was just fucking terrified. And I hadn't been scared of anything apart from the drugs not being there until that point. And I sat at the back of the meeting broken. And I couldn't lift my eyes up off the floor because I didn't want to make eye contact with anyone because I was so full of shame about what I'd become. Everything I despised, I'd just become. I walked in with waves of guilt, shame and remorse. And you all looked all right. You know, you were clean, you had clothes on, like you weren't fighting each other, and the police weren't there. And it was really confusing. And a couple of things happened in that meeting. One, the pot went around. I'm a kleptomaniac as well, by the way. So I would just steal it, even if I don't need it. And you lot were passing money around, and I had no money. I walked into the rooms with someone else's clothes. And my mind was clear not to nick the money. That was number one. Don't nick the money, Jim. And I briefly looked up a couple of times. You know, I'm busted at the back of the meeting. I can laugh now looking back at it. It was not funny at the time. But what I did is the only reason I looked up was to see if there was any good-looking females around because I thought I might be a bit of a catch as well. And then a guy carried a message. That was the deal breaker. A guy sat at the top table and he picked up the big book and he said that there was a cast iron guarantee that I needn't ever pick up a drink or drug ever again. That there was a caveat to that there was some work that I had to do, there was some action that I had to put in, but if I was willing to go to any lengths, I needn't ever pick up a drink or drug again. And he got my attention. I didn't believe him because that's nonsense, isn't it? You know, like when you think about recovery, it's nonsense. You know, like for the new, I'm not on about if you've been here for a while, it's normal. But if you're new, what we're told the equivalent of is some golden beans, go and grow them, water them every day, wait for the beanstalk to grow, and the golden goose will shit eggs for you. Really? Because it doesn't seem real what happens in here. But here's what happened. I came in here, I heard that man, that message was enough for me to come to my following meeting. I come in here on the 3rd of November 2010. And I asked the man, because you lot talk about stuff, so I hear the language, like when you're listening, because it's all gobbledygook, isn't it? I don't know what any of you lot are talking about when I walk in here. Service, speakers, meetings, commitment. I don't know about any of that stuff. But you was on about sponsors, and all I know about sponsors was on like footballers' t-shirts. And I asked about a sponsor. What's a sponsor, mate? And they said, the man helps save your life, Jim. That's what the sponsor does. He was misled, obviously. But I wanted my life to be saved. So I asked that little man, the little Scottish guy that I met. He was in a meeting. I heard his voice. It was like God had spoken. He was sitting in front of me. And so I went and asked you lot first whether he was a good sponsor, because I need validation all the time. I can't make my own decisions unless you lot approve of them. And so you lot said, yeah, he's an amazing sponsor. So I approached him and said, look, mate. And he was like, like old timers, you play with newcomers, man. It's like a cat with a mouse, And I was like, mate, is it? And like, I'm looking like he's looking up at me. You know what I mean? It's about 5'2". And I said, hello, mate. And he went, I won't do the accent. He was like, hello, mate. And I said, would it be possible? Could you maybe? And he was like, what? I was like, would you help me? And he was like, he gave me a big hug. He told me it'd be a pleasure. He gave me his phone number, told me to ring him. And I avoided him. I didn't ring him. If he was at a meeting that I went to, I dodged out. And so I got a new sponsor. And I'll tell you why, because this guy scared the life out of me. Not because he was intimidating, but I knew he saw through me. It wasn't to do with his stature. I knew he saw through me. And that scared me. So I got another man to ask me, and I asked him to help me. He asked me to get honest with him in 5 areas. He was going away that weekend to see his dad as a result of recovery. He hadn't seen him for like 10 years, 8 years. And he said 5 things. And I said, yeah, whatever it takes, mate. And he said, first, tell me the things where you're being dishonest in your life. And I was like, all right, okay. Have them ready for me by Monday, Jim. And I said, yeah, cool. So I left that meeting thinking I definitely need a new sponsor. Anyway, the guy come back Monday and he sat with me, and this is how the process started with me. He sat with me, he said, Jim, have you got those 5, those items? And I said, yeah. He said, what are they? And I said, I'm selling weed. I've got counterfeit money. I've got a phone in the treatment center. I'm still hanging around my old pals. And there was something else. And he was like, okay, any women? I said, no. I was in a relationship at the treatment center as well within 2 weeks. And she was the one, she was the one. And he said, are there any women? And I said, no. Remember what I said? I lie for a living. It don't bother me. I don't feel no way about looking you in the eye and telling you absolute shit and walking away from it with no conscience about it whatsoever. And I lied to him and I become disturbed. And I'd never experienced that before. And I walked away from him and my mind was going, why did you lie to him? I was like, do you have that internal dialogue? Like, why did you lie? I don't know why I lied to him. That fucking committee are chatting away to each other. Anyway, I rang him that night and I was like, Dom, I need to come, I need to speak to you. Like, I lied to you about something. He said, yeah, I know. I said, no, it's really sensitive. Like, you can't meet me on a treatment center. We have to meet off the treatment center. He was like, no worries. Anyway, he met me. We sat outside on someone's garden wall. And I said, look, that stuff that I lied about, I've been seeing this girl. And he said, yeah, I know. I said, how do you mean you know? He said, because I'm just like you. He said, you know the maternity unit that's 500 yards up the road? I said, yeah. He said, when I was in here, I was climbing the wall of the maternity unit. Now, the reason for that is all of a sudden, I didn't feel gunned or judged by anything. This guy just had me and he identified with me and he didn't critique me for it. He was just like, I'm just like you, Jim. And this guy had a lot of years under his belt. And I was like, we're nothing like each other. He said, we are. There's just a slight more difference in our life. There's a slight more difference in our journey. But underneath it all, at core base level, I'm exactly the same as you. And this man took me in, he took me to his house, he held my hand and he started to take me through all 12 steps. And I had a spiritual awakening as a result of going through them. And I laughed with him and I cried with him and I fought with him throughout the process. I didn't just come in and do the church, oh, yeah. I'd be like, why have I got to do that? Meeting every day. Every day. Yes, Jim. My first bit of service was me sitting in a meeting and the committee announcing that they needed a tea person at an early morning gratitude meeting. I never used to be an early morning. I could not get up in the morning for love nor money. And Sunday was my day off. I'm in a treatment centre. Like, give me a break. So the committee have asked for someone, and the next thing, my hand is just in the air, supported by my sponsor at my elbow. And what the meeting did was they didn't have a committee meeting. They just clapped and went, "Woo." So cool to have you on board, Jim. And at the end of the meeting, I was like, Dom, what just happened? He said, you're the tea person. I was like, you make their own fucking tea. Because where I come from, if you made the tea, you was a bitch. So I was just like, because I've been in prison all my life, I don't know no different. And he said, no. It's a job. Do you know the language? I don't understand. And this guy just had patience with me. He was like, no, not you don't get paid for it, Jim. He said, like, you turn up, you get service positions, you like it will make sense. Turn up next week, it'll be okay. So I turned up next week and I'm new. So I'm new. So you lot smell new, yeah? So like I'm in the meeting and I'm by the tea station, right? Rigid. I've got no way of communicating with anyone either. And like the guys would come in and they would be like, oh, hi, are you new? Whereabouts are you from? And I'd just be like, do you want tea or coffee, mate? And they'd be like, I haven't seen you around here before, Jim. Like, how's it going? I'd be, do you want milk and sugar? And then I turned up next week and you lot remembered my name. You said, hi, Jim, and you give me a hug and you asked me how I was doing, how was treatment. And the stuff I bitched and moaned about, you remembered and you helped me and you guided me and you advised me with it. And at the end of the meetings, when everyone left and when everyone was going home, and I didn't have no ability to go home, to go to restaurants and coffee shops and stuff like that, you lot told me, don't worry about it, come. And when I'd look at the menu sitting in the restaurant and I would pick the cheapest thing on there, which was normally cheese on toast or like garlic bread, you would say, order whatever you want, Jim. And my pride wouldn't allow me to do that. I'd feel really shamed about it. And you said to me, not if, when you're in a position to, you pass that on to someone else. And the fellowship loved me. You took me in cars, you drove me around, you took me to conventions, to unity days, you showed me about H&I, PI, you told me about the importance of service, you showed me how to pray, you showed me how to take other men through the book, you told me how to be committed in here, you told me how to start turning my life around. And look, this is the thing. What I'd like to say is that as a result of doing all 12 steps and getting involved with all the service and the prayer and the meditation and all the other beautiful things we do in here, I was just like, like the Dalai Lama. Like just, I've got CA, this is really cool. What happened was I started to pick up clean time and I started to pick up key rings and I started to become sick because I started to be getting lazy and I started to get complacent. And my pride didn't allow me to come to the meeting. Like every meeting I go to, I talk to someone about it. Every meeting I go to, everyone's all right. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. What about you? I'm all right. How about you? I'm great. So everyone's fucking great. So I don't have permission to come into the meeting and tell you I'm not all right. It's all right to not be all right. There's no shame in that. It's okay to be broken or lost or confused. It's okay to have made mistakes and not be shamed for them or judged for them or gossiped about. Because it's a fellowship that's meant to be loving, that holds you and guides you through it and steers you. And at 5 years, what I did was sabotage my life, clean and sober. I become the same state that I was before I walked in. I didn't want to carry on living. I just didn't want to carry on living. I was done. And I didn't understand why. And you lot come and grabbed me and you held me and you held my hand and you told me it was going to be okay. You told me that you told me I was a stale, crusty sandwich sitting on the shelf and I needed to be refreshed. And I needed to be revolutionized. I needed to be changed. I needed to actually allow the program to work through me. I was told to start being anonymous in an anonymous fellowship. Stop going to meetings and high-fiving the world and telling everyone you're here, pontificating about how many people you're sponsoring or what service you're doing. Just get on quietly with what you've got to do, Jim. Go and do your service quietly, Jim. Go and help other people quietly, Jim. Go and improve your life. Go and be a good dad, be a good partner, be a good friend. Go and get a job. Go and pay your taxes. Go about and live your life in such a way that when you get home and you retire, that after you've done your review and you've spoke with God and you've cleared up where you've been at fault and where you've also excelled, that when my head touches the pillar, I sleep and my mind isn't disturbed. And that when I wake up, my heart's not heavy. And I'm not consumed with fear waiting for it to come on top because there's nothing going on. When the phone calls, I can answer it. When there's a knock on the door, I can open it. I'm not sprinting out the back garden. That I have peace. That no matter what's going on around me in my life, I'm okay with it. Not like I mean skipping through the tulips when life turns up, when there's struggles. I don't mean that sort of stuff. But I mean that I haven't reacted and responded in a way that's irreversible. Because that's what I do. It's extreme. Forget drinking and drugging. I need to just stay here. So that when stuff comes my way, it's not game over. I've been given a phenomenal life from you guys, from my God, and from this fellowship. That song that I got asked to play, that I asked them to play, was about grace. I stand here down to God's grace. I don't run a perfect program. I make loads of mistakes. I get loads of things wrong, and my reactions and responses aren't always fantastic. But I'm human. My life is fundamentally different to where it was. I actually give a shit about how I am today. I actually care about where my footprint treads. Am I treading lightly? What's my conduct like? What's it like when you're not around? Because I've done that. Come to the meeting, pontificate about a program that I don't own, and walk out the door and be exactly the same as when I'm using. Now it's about what's my conduct like when you're not around? What am I like with my kids? Am I screaming and shouting at them? Have I got patience and tolerance with them? Am I trying to encourage them and teach them? What's my relationship look like? Am I tolerant? Am I patient? Am I loving? Am I kind? Am I forgiving? What's my work life? Like all of the areas. What's my health like? Am I like killing myself, smoking 80 fags a day, drinking 20 coffees and eating 3 fry-ups? Like what's going on in my life? What's it look like? Quietly. And then I go to God and I apply the program in order to bring around the changes to become the person that I've always dreamt that I could never be. And that I also get the ability to be here. Because now, bearing in mind, I'll end on this. I came in here hating myself, despised myself, no ability to look the world in the eye, disgusted of what I'd become. No hope, no hopes, no future, no aspirations, nothing. This was just another thing that I was going to try that was not going to work. To today, I've got a life rippled with opportunities, rippled with them. I value myself today. The person that I thought I was when I come in, the disgust I had with myself isn't who I am today. I love myself today. Not in an egotistical, like, woo, I don't mean it like that. I mean in that I have value for me. I know my worth. I know my value. You gave me that. God gave me that. I know my worth. And I got told if I don't know my worth, I will not stay here. Because guess what? That thing that I did at 5 years, life kaplunk, I call it, pulling the straws out, amazed when all the fucking marbles fall out the bottom, that will recur. And next time I might not be able to put all the straws back in because my life's on the line. This is someone else's. There's a lot of American guys in here, but this is someone else's. And I share it every opportunity. And if any of you guys know who actually shared this, please tell me because I need to thank them. He talks about an oil tanker being at sea. These big things that take like 2 days to stop or whatever they are. And he says that when these oil tankers are out at sea, the captain's on board steering it, and that the oil tanker needs to stay on course. Because if the oil tanker goes off course by 1 degree, the oil tanker ends up in another continent, not just slightly off course. And then he talks about applying that into our life, because 1 degree on its own doesn't seem too much. But you allow that 1 degree to continue, its trajectory takes me hugely off course. My job today is to try and stay 1 degree on course. I hope you guys do too as well. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. You're my hero.
I didn't bark. I didn't bark. Damn. That's emotional. Fan Jam, amazing. I'm still Pascal and I'm still an addict. Unfortunately, our time is up. Oh. If you have any questions that went unanswered, or if you feel the need to share, please introduce yourselves to someone after the meeting and exchange phone numbers. Remember, we are all here to help. I would like to ask Martin for some related announcements.
My name is Maarten, I'm an addict. I just have the one announcement. In the kids' room right after this meeting, Kiara, who is the 8-year-old daughter of a very good friend of mine, Sebas, will do an impromptu workshop on making bracelets. So she asked if there are other kids from her age, but I don't think it's really an age-related thing. If you want to learn how to make bracelets, Kiara, 8 years old, is waiting for you. So that's the only one. So see you guys later. Oh, Jim, we have a present for you.
Sorry, my fault. Okay, so to close this meeting, I will have Caden from your beautiful city of Breda come up to read a vision for you.
Thanks. My name is Caden. I'm an addict. A vision for you. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.